what's up guys, I'm Alfonso. Today I'm going to be reacting to What If World War II Never Ended by Life's Biggest Questions. Now, I love Life's Biggest Questions. I haven't reacted to them in like months and months, I think. Yeah, we're back reacting to this, and yeah, and if you're wondering if like I sound like a little stuffy, it's because allergies, it's spring and allergies come in. But yeah, with that being said, let's react.
World War II marked the last time the world engaged in hot war on a vast scale. Between the years of 1939 and 1945, between 50 to 80 million people died as a result of fighting and the aftermath. The war ended amid some of the worst atrocities of all time being committed, including concentration camps and the first ever nuclear bomb drop. We are all still feeling the effects of this devastating event in human history, but what if it was still going on today? Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that likes to talk about anything and everything from politics to economics, history to science, pop culture to simulated realities. I'm your host Rebecca Felgate, and today I'm asking, what if World War II never ended? Before we get into this video, I want to ask your opinion. What do you think the world would be like if we were still at war? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Also, make sure you click on that notification bell to stay up to date with big answers. Okay, if World War II had never ended, we would have been at war for coming on 80 years. If the aftermath of 6 years of fighting killed 80 million, imagine how many could have died in 80 years. If my at times slightly dodgy mathematics serves me correctly, if the death rate had remained consistent, 1,064,000,000 people would have died by now. But of course,
Just imagine if we were at still war, then like there'd probably be like disease because there'd be a lot of smoke because of all the gunshots and war stuff. But I think they would probably just given up already at that point, unless they were like I forgot what they were fighting for in World War II. I go to school, yes I do, but like I just forgot what they were going to war for. Don't judge me.
that isn't factoring in increased death rates from higher powered weapons, which we surely would have created. The death of over 1 billion people wouldn't be the only thing affecting the population on Earth. After World War II came the baby boom years, in which birth rates accelerated massively. This simply wouldn't have happened. Had the war continued with the higher death rate and lower birth rate, it would have taken us much longer to reach population 3 billion, which we did hit in 1960. Perhaps now we would just have 4 or so billion on the planet, so 3.7 billion less than now, which is pretty insane. This isn't just the fighting that would have kept us down, but the nasty diseases that came along with the carnage.
Yeah, exactly what I said. There'd probably be diseases from the smoke, like people could get cancer from all the smoke and fighting, and yeah.
World War II had never ended, then it is likely that all of the important social movements that have come around since the ceasefire would have never emerged or taken much longer. Civil rights, for example. Would people have had the energy to fight civil race wars when there was an inter-country hot war on the go? After the war came key social events like the swinging 60s and the flower power 70s, during which Western humans became a lot less socially uptight. Had the war never ended, perhaps these movements would have never got started and the world would have remained socially uninclusive. Or perhaps it would have had the opposite effect. Women in the workplace became common during the Second World War because the men were busy fighting. If more and more healthy males were sent away, perhaps women would start enlisting too. Perhaps when people saw that we all died just the same, social hierarchy would have been broken down. World War II caused an insane amount of damage, especially in Europe and Japan. Had the war continued, I have no doubt the devastation would have spread to countries not yet drawn into the fray. Many European cities were reduced to rubble in World War II, with London, Paris and Berlin sustaining a lot of damage, not to mention Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The rebuild of societies only came after the war. If it had continued, much more would have been destroyed, as well as our history as settlers along with it. Aside from Pearl Harbor, the United States of America didn't see any fighting on home soil, but if the war had continued for over 80 years, then that would have changed. This would have had a huge effect on infrastructure and our economies. If World War II had never ended, we would...
Yeah, and plus they would need like a lot of army people. Please. Sorry, but like they need like a lot of army people just so that like they can fight. Like after this section, guys are like, okay, go, it's your turn. Then yeah.
would likely still be living with food rations. That's if we were lucky anyway. If we were unlucky, there would be full-scale famines. Countries like Russia, who were already struggling, would have been worse affected. And yes, there would have been no bananas, or anything particularly crazy we love today. Do you think they would have had time and money to invent Pop-Tarts? Because they wouldn't. Like social movements would not have happened, neither would environmental.
Not the biggest. I mean, I like Pop-Tarts, but I'm not like the hugest fan of Pop-Tarts, so I think I'll live.
It's hard to worry about what we're doing to the ozone layer when countries are bombing the living daylights out of one another. The 1970s saw the rise of environmentalism, but if war was still raging, would we even be worried about our polar ice caps melting? How quickly would it be until we destroyed our planet? And I haven't even mentioned the nukes yet. We'll get there. Almost everything synonymous with modern day culture, computers, the internet, cell phones, social media, Netflix, none of that could have happened if World War II was still raging. Why? Well, who is focusing on technology for entertainment when all resources are being pulled into paying for ongoing war? While companies and perhaps the internet may have been invented, they would have been crafted as alternative weapons for war for internal communications. The television, computer, and internet boom we have seen simply wouldn't have happened, and even if it had, nobody could afford to pay for these luxury items. We would likely still be living in the era of one black and white television in the household, if we were lucky, and going to the movies to see a film would be a special treat. There wouldn't be any high-budget fantastical Hollywood movies either, mostly just government-made propaganda to keep people pro-war. You know what else probably wouldn't have happened when it did? The moon landings. I understand that the United States were in competition with Russia when they finally made it to the moon, but at the time the pair were not in active hot war. Even if we were trying to focus our energies on getting to space, it may have been in order to generate some kind of intergalactic weapon. The moon landings were such an important time for the world that it couldn't help but bring us together. If World War II was still ongoing today, we can only assume that it just wouldn't have happened. No Saturn Cassini mission, no Mars mission, no Virgin Galactic. Who on earth would Elon Musk be anyway? We would be further away than we are now when it comes to unlocking the secrets of our universe. Perhaps it goes without saying, but of course if there had been no end to World War II, there would have been no NATO. Where would the war crimes end, and who would countries have to answer to? The main countries involved with fighting in World War II on the one side were the United Kingdom, France, the USA, the Soviet Union, so former Russia, and China. Interestingly, they all fought on the same side. On the other side, the Axis of Power was formed of Germany, Japan, and Italy. If the war had have continued, would the United States, China, and Russia stayed on the same side, or would they have turned against one another like the USSR and the USA did after the war? If it was still going on, who would be the modern-day superpower? Would the Middle East and some African nations use the fray as a way to level up the playing field and use the opportunity to rise? Probably. Had World War II not ended, perhaps the richest and most productive country in the world would be Saudi Arabia. Does it even matter who the superpower is anyway? How could any country have managed to stay out of things for this long? Lest we forget, World War II ended with the detonation of 2 atomic bombs. If this wasn't enough to end the war, then how many more would have been dropped? Would we be living in a nuclear winter right now? Would we all have moved underground? What would have happened to our wildlife? Would we even recognize the Earth after 75 years of nuclear hits? Probably not. Thankfully, the fighting of World War II has ended and all of the positives that came in its aftermath have come, but in some ways, some of the issues that ignited the war are still prevalent. Beneath the fighting, the argument was between 2 separate ideologies, the anti-Enlightenment totalitarianism rule, or humanitarianism and democracy. These 2 ideologies still exist today and are still causing friction and threatening sparks that could ignite the whole thing once again. If there was an easy resolution, then this would have been resolved already. The ability to move forward without forcing the way we believe and live on other people and without resorting to anger in a breakdown of communication is probably the greatest challenge humanity will ever face. I think you guys should look up the Great Filter Theory and then you can tell me if you think that we're teetering on the edge. So guys, I think we'll leave that there for now. Obviously this is a far-reaching and loaded question and we have only discussed a few of the many ways in which life as we know it would be different.
But anyways guys, hope you guys like this video. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, share this video and subscribe, join the gang, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace out.